rehearsal, I guess. So welcome to today, and let's get started on the charcoal version. So I'm going to swap my screen around now, and you'll be able to see my table, hopefully, if all goes well. Let's see how we go. Press all the right buttons. And then this one. And that should take us to there, which is wonderful. That looks like it's working at my end. If it isn't at your end, just let me know, and I'll see if I can sort something out. Most times I can't because it's usually someone else's end, not mine. So if it's all working here, then that's a good sign. I'm just going to put my earbuds in. My stupid iPod pods or whatever they're called decided they weren't working today, so I'm wired in. All right, so I'm going to just make sure everybody...
Jeannie, I've got your voice but no picture.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No picture.
Oh, hang on. There you are. It's all right. You've come back on again.
Oh,
okay.
All right. That's a bit strange.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is everybody...
You're on satellite, and sometimes the satellite loses the link.
Ah, okay. All right.
So, okay.
Okay. There's Janine's fallen off again. All right, lovely. Okay, so I'm just going to turn everyone's microphone off if that's okay. And the reason I'm doing that is just so that there's no background noise, no disturbances, dogs and scratching and stuff like that, which is what happens. There's also those noises here at my place, and I'm going to do my best to keep them down. There is someone building something over the fence, so if you hear banging and drilling and stuff, it's not me. All right, so welcome. Now, hopefully you can see my table and my paper. So this is just an art diary, just drawing paper. And with this part of the class, we just have a little practice run with some charcoal to draw up our subject for today, which is this leaf. So the first part we're going to do in the black and white. So that's why I've given you a black and white picture. And it's really just about looking at the tones and all the different lights and darks and things like that. So let's get stuck into it. I like to draw.
Jeannie, I can only see you. I can't see your paper.
Oh, is everyone else able to?
I can see the paper.
Okay.
I can see the paper.
Okay, so everyone else can see the paper. Lynn, have you got the grid up on your screen? So can you see just me or everybody?
No, I can just see you.
It's me. Okay, that's really strange. What if I stop the screen share and then try and do it again? So,
okay, and if that doesn't work, then what I'll do is I'll log off and come back in again.
Yeah, all right. I'll just stop the screen share, everyone, and then I'll start it again. Sorry. See if we can get Lynn in there. So at the moment, you should be able to see me and possibly everyone else if you've got that setting on yours.
Yes.
Great. So now I'll go share screen, choose all those things. And click all my buttons up here.
I've just got a blank screen and it says that you've started screen sharing.
How strange. Hang on a second. Screen mirror. I'm just hooking it in again. What can you see now?
That looks okay. It looks like it's sharing the screen.
So you can see my paper?
No, I can't see anything. All I've got is it says you've started screen sharing and a blank screen.
What can happen is that if there's a delay in or an overload in the internet, it can come up black for a little while.
Can it?
It's happening to me all the time at work, to my students as well.
Okay.
And then sort of a bit of a delay, so it could be that.
Could be that. Yeah, I don't know what else to do, Lynn.
That's okay. I'll log out and come back in again and see what happens.
All right.
It's not a problem.
Okay. All right. Do that then and we'll see how we go.
All right, hang on. I'm trying something else first because I can see all of you at the top of the page now. Let's see what that does. No, when I enter full screen, I don't get you guys.
Very annoying.
That's all right. It is. It's just one of those things. I will. It says the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
No, she hasn't.
That's a message. I know you haven't. So I'll log out and I'll come back in. So I'll see you guys soon.
Okay, we'll get started. Sorry, guys. Okay, so today we're going to do this leaf. As I said, let's start on our little black and white version. So just referring to this picture here, if you can cover up or not look at the colour version, because sometimes it's a bit distracting and we get confused. Well, I get confused anyway. So we're on a dark background today, but I'm not going to worry about that as far as the charcoal goes. First thing we want to do is draw up a thumbnail image or shape of the size of this actual picture. So I usually like to nearly fill up my whole page in my art diary or my drawing pad. And but if you want to do something smaller and just let that, take up a quarter of your page or whatever you like, then that's cool too. So whatever works for you. So I just like to give myself a bit of a frame to work in like this. And then I'm just going to draw in the leaf. I was just checking to see if I put a grid mark on there. I did, I think. My printout's terrible. Anyway, so let's just draw in the shape of this. It's quite a beautiful leaf. It's a lovely autumn leaf. Let's start down at the little stem and notice the angle of that and where the point of that begins in relation to the edge of your page and the bottom of your page. So I'm saying it's about there in regard to my square area. And then I'm just going to draw a little line up to there. So that's about the shape of that little stem. And then I'm just going to run my charcoal very lightly. So I'm holding my charcoal quite loosely. I don't want to get too tight or tense with the drawing. And I'm just going to run it around in the shape of the leaf that I can see. Now, I think it's a maple leaf, this design. If, what was I going to say? I don't know, something. Anyway, just, follow that around in the shape. Oh, that's what I was going to say. If you're not very confident with drawing, don't stress too much because it's a natural thing. And if we don't get exactly the right bump in exactly the right spot, it's not going to matter that much really. So we want to just try and get the basic shape of the leaf in there. And you can see the edges are quite jagged, aren't they? We've got all these little pointy bits on the sides. I haven't put all of those in yet, and may not for this part of the class. But we really just want to get very familiar with the shapes and the lights and the darks. So what I'm going to look for now I've got my shape drawn in, and please stop me if I'm going too fast. If you feel like I'm racing ahead and you can't catch up, just, unmute yourself and say, hang on a second. I'm more than happy to wait. So I know I do rush ahead a little bit because my brain's 5 minutes ahead of my mouth. So don't hesitate to do that. This is for your benefit, and it is an intro class. So, don't feel like you're not keeping up, because I can always slow down. All right, so
Thank you, Jeannie, and I'm back on board and I can see you and see what you're doing.
Excellent.
I also have to remember you're left-handed and I'm right-handed, like some of us, and therefore the way you do things are slightly different to how I do them.
Aha. Yes, this is true. This is true. I often forget about the left-handed thing. So yes, but you do it your way, as we do. Lovely. Good. I'm glad you're back, Lynn. That's awesome. So the first thing you're welcome. First thing I want to look at are the little veins in here. And I know they're a teeny bit hard to see, but what I'm going to do is just very lightly draw them in. So you can see there's one vein from that center leaf that goes all the way down to the stem at the base of the leaf. And then there's another one from that this left-hand leaf. So we've basically got three sections of this leaf, haven't we? So you've got your middle, your left and your right veins. And then off from those veins, there are other veins that kind of run off from the center towards the outside. So just if you want to just lightly put a few of those in, and this really is just so that we're getting familiar with the picture, looking at where stuff is and committing it to memory for when we do it next time. So you can see that the little veins run off to the side, and they all kind of join up really. It's like a little web, isn't it? Little network of lines. So I'm probably not putting them in exactly the right place, but it's just good to get familiar with it. Oh, there's another little center vein popping up there. Someone else must have fallen out. Participants. Kathy, there she is. Hi, Kathy, welcome. We've just started, so we're doing the little charcoal sketch of the leaf now. And yeah, so hopefully you'll be able to have your paper there ready to go and your charcoal, and begin to draw in this lovely little leaf. So it's quite a basic shape. There's nothing terribly complicated about it. And again, just looking at the lines and the veins, I find that if I have this up on a screen in front of me, so I'm blessed because I've got an iPad and a computer, so I can have both on at the same time. And it's really helpful to have it on another screen, even if you had it on your phone, because you can zoom in closer and you can really see, you know, the contours and the details. Often on a printout like this on paper, it's not very clear, especially on my dodgy printer. So the home printers are not the best for getting clarity unless you use really nice paper. So there's a couple of ways you can have your image in front of you. So I do all of the ways I can think of, because then if one doesn't work, I've still got another one to fall back on. Lovely. So now I've got some of those veins and lines in there. Next thing we want to be looking at is the darks and the lights. And you can see there's pretty much a dark, a mid and a light in tones in that leaf. And if you squint at it and look through your eyelashes and just look at the different shades and just figure out where the darks are within that picture. So I can see, I'm just going to push my charcoal down fairly hard in the dark parts, because that's where I want to get all the dark tone. Okay, so this is what's going to make this interesting, is all the lights and the darks and the shadows, because it really does give something texture and body when you can focus really intently on your tones. So it's one thing I've learned over the years, is this tone is so important. Colour is important too, but tone is even more important, and you need to learn how to apply different colours to different tones, because that's going to give your art strength. Okay, so just marking in the darks. I'm using my little bit of charcoal on its side so that I don't get a hard line. I just want soft, smudgy kind of marks. And so using it on its side gives me that effect. And still squinting. So every time I want to find the light or the dark, I squint at the image, and it really helps me to kind of blur everything off and see where things are. So still squinting, still finding the darks. So there's quite a lot of dark in there. I'm going to keep checking back all the time. And there's little bits of light on the very edge of this leaf. So on the inside section, on that bottom part there that just comes up on the left, you can see there's a little bit of light right on the edge of it. So if you leave a little bit of white or paper undone there, then that's going to give you the touch of light on the edge of the leaf. And then over on the right, so again, just squinting at it and then drawing in or filling in the darkest areas. And as you do that, it'll start to take on some life. and you'll begin to be able to see the folds and the shadows and all the dints and curves and things. It's quite amazing how that sort of thing happens. I've been doing some charcoal drawing classes with Ray Coffey. He's an amazing artist. And because I have never really had any proper drawing training, so I decided I'd go off to him. And then COVID happened and we couldn't go. But anyway, I went back this week, and it's just so much fun just working with charcoal and really focusing on the lights and the darks. And it helps your art so much, because then you can convert that knowledge into colour and really, get your tones right. Okay, so I'm just working my way around the leaf. Darkened off on this right hand third. That's what I'm going to call these thirds. The tip of that is quite dark, and then as we come in towards the vein and towards the body of the leaf, it gets a little bit lighter. And then it's got what looks like a tear in it. So it's almost as if there's two sections there and there's part of the leaf missing. Now we're on a dark background on the picture, so it's a bit hard to distinguish. But if I take out some of that charcoal and leave my background white for this exercise, then I can leave the tear in there too, just by taking it out and making it into two little pieces there instead of one. So I didn't quite get all the charcoal off there. Could be a bit whiter behind that. And then you might have to keep going over the little vein lines again just to darken those up, because as you work around it with your charcoal, you'll find that you'll smudge things in and kind of lose your lines a little bit. So sometimes you've got to redefine them as you go. That's okay. And then again, notice where the light is too. So where the lightest part of the leaf is, and that's the part we don't want to fill in or smudge in. Just try to leave that white if you can. And then where it's mid-tone, so for instance, around this section on the right leaf, on the right third, it's not dark, but it's not light. So it's a mid-tone. So what I'm doing is pressing a little lighter with the charcoal just to get a nice sort of soft grey that's not too dark and not too light. And I can see there's a lot more of that in the middle as well. So when you're trying to find tone with charcoal or one colour, what you want to do is just vary the pressure of how hard you press. So when you press harder, you're going to get a darker mark. And when you press lighter, you'll get a softer, lighter mark. So just move around the picture and look at the parts that you're doing. For instance, the tip of the top of the leaf, so that's that middle third at the very top, is really light because that's where the light's catching it. So I've got to take some of my charcoal out. This is a brand new kneadable eraser, so it's not very dirty yet. And they're wonderful for taking charcoal off or putting the light back in. If you fill up an area where you need more light, you can always use the eraser to take some charcoal off and put the light back in. So just working your way around it. This is just to get familiar with the picture, start to get to know where it turns and where the dips and little crevices and things are, because that's what we're going to be working on today, is shadow and form, and learning how to kind of mix everything around and get all the different textures. So we want to be able to look at this at the end of the class and feel like you can pick it up, and it's got texture and body.
Hi, Jeanne.
Yeah.
I just see that on the screen you've just disappeared and a low battery 10% remaining is showing up as your screen.
Me too, yeah.
Oh, that must be my iPad. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've got to plug that in then. Goodness gracious. Thank you for letting me know. There we are.
Technology.
Sorry,
I
I'm
thought it was
normally...
me. I went down and checked all the PowerPoints.
Oh gosh, sorry. Apologies. I'd forgotten to plug that one in. There, see, I tell everyone else to do it. Make sure you've got everything plugged in so you don't go flat. And then I didn't do it myself. Thanks for letting me know. Awesome. So, yeah, so just kind of move the charcoal around on the page and just keep, you know, checking the tones. So, and don't worry about the dark background. We're just going to imagine you've got a dark background and not worry too much about that. Just noticing the lights and the darks and putting the lights back in where you need to if you have to. The other cool thing to notice is, see on the side of the vein, so you've got a dark line for the vein. Let's pick on, oops, let's focus on this one here. So on the center leaf, top right corner, what's happened?
We've lost you again.
Yeah, camera's turned itself off. Silly thing. There we are. Sorry about that. So we've got a dark vein here. Just put that in a little bit darker to show you what I mean. And so by marking that in there, and then I can get my eraser and make a sharp knife edge kind of section to it. So what I want to do is I want to run it down beside the vein. So I'm just looking at the picture to see where the light is. Let's make it on the right hand side of the vein. And if I run that down the right side like that, see how it just lightens it up on the right, and then it goes down into the dark line. So it's starting to look like it's kind of dipping down, hopefully, creating a little bit of a shadow effect. And then I can, you know, come back in and just put a bit more tone down, but leave that little tiny sliver of light there. And it just helps to make it look a little bit more realistic. Yeah, zoomed in, so hopefully that'll help a little bit. And so you could essentially do that on each of the veins that have a little bit of light on them, because the light's important, and that tells us, you know, the direction of the sun or whatever it is, whether it's outdoors or in. But the direction of the light is what will give your art interest, and you've got to make sure that it's coming from the same direction in all the parts, unless there's lots of different light sources. But usually, you know, if there's shadow or cast shadow, it'll be all falling in the same direction. And so in this instance, if I want to highlight those little veins, then I can see on the right hand section of the leaf. So if I draw in a dark mark there again, bring that down to there, and then I can do the same thing, and I can just put a little bit of a light mark on the right hand side. Sometimes it's a bit hard to see over your hand and the eraser and all the things. And of course we can do this with pencil or pastel when we do the colour version. But that sort of helps to give the vein a little bit of a shadow and tone. So they're the kinds of things we're going to be doing today, just to create some body in this. It's quite a speckly leaf, isn't it? It's got lots of lovely colours in there. So when we do the colour version, we'll be able to play with quite a few different reds and browns and things. Be quite nice. Lovely. So we'll just spend another couple of minutes on this section, and then we're going to get ready to start the colour version. As I said, this is always just a little rehearsal. It's just about noticing where the lights and the darks are. And that's what I'm kind of doing now. I'm just focusing on where the shadows fall. So you can see on the center leaf, top shoulder of that, I'm going to call it a shoulder, this bit here is quite dark. And if you look closely, you can see that that's all in shadow, because that section of the leaf must kind of fold up a little bit, and it's like a shadow. And then it goes all the way down to close to the stem. And then on the right hand side of that shadow line, everything is slightly lighter. So that helps to give the impression that there's a fold in the leaf and that it's kind of tipping up and casting a shadow on the other section of it, on the other part. So down through there. And then you can tell that that's folding up because on the very edge, we talked about that right at the start, there's a little bit of light shining just on the edge there, which is hard to show on a white background, but it's got a bit of light on the edge of the leaf there. So that's telling me that the light source is coming from the left-hand side and it's falling in that direction. So everything that's folding out towards the light, like this little left-hand side of the leaf, is kind of catching the light there because it must be folding out. So it's got this lovely fold or form that you can kind of tell that's happening because of the light. So that's what we're going to focus on, is just getting all the light in the right places and shadows and things today. Lovely jubbly. So we might finish up this section, and if you feel like coming back and really, finishing it off and focusing on this later, by all means do, if you've got the time. I love working in charcoal. It's just so satisfying when you can make things have tone and form just using black, basically. It's quite lovely. But now we've had a go at that and figured out the shape and the size and where it sits within the page, so we can now start working on the colour version. So I'm going to pop this one aside, and as I said earlier, if you want me to stop or wait, then say so. So I don't want anyone to feel rushed or left behind.
Thank you.
That's all right. We want to do the fun bits, don't we? This chair's on wheels and it keeps rolling away from me. All right. So first thing we need to grab is a little board, if you've got a board handy, to tape your paper onto. And then we can start looking at some colours. Lovely, lovely. So what I'm going to do is, I've just got these little bits of blue tape that I pop into the corners of my paper, and I find that's enough when I'm sitting at a table to stop it from moving around. Now, what colour papers did I suggest on here? Or did I? Aubergine, dark maroon, brown, terracotta. So I think something like a terracotta tone would be good. Even something like that colour would be quite good. Black would be fine, but what I want to do is get some shadow under the leaf. So black won't allow that to happen. So if you've got something that's not quite as dark as black, that would be the best. There's this colour, which is the maroon. It's a lovely colour. So what I'm trying to do is kind of figure out, because I don't want to fill in the background today. So I'm trying to find something that's about the same tone as the background that the leaf is sitting on. So you could go lighter if you wanted to, but I wouldn't go too much darker because, as I said, I want to get some shadow in underneath it. So we'll need a paper that's not quite as dark as shadow colour, if that makes sense. So yeah, any of those or whatever you happen to have. Don't stress if you don't have those colours. Just something that's mid-tone would be good. All right, so I might use, which one? Might go terracotta today. And tape that down onto your board. So I've just got a small board here. It's nice and light, easy to manage. And I'm just reusing some tape from my previous class. And it's not very neat and tidy. If you wanted to tape all around your paper, you can do that too. Personal preference, but I just like to tape it down like that. When you do press the tape down, don't press too hard because it can tear the paper. So you just want it to hold on lightly. And if you do have very sticky tape, sometimes it's a good idea to just, stick it onto your tablecloth or your clothing first and then put it down on your paper. So you get some of that adhesive stickiness off it. And that way, hopefully it won't tear. The other risk of tearing is if you leave it on the page for too long. So often, if I leave a painting on an easel for 3 weeks or something, it often tears if you're not very careful when you're taking it off. Okay, I've just got Kathy's fallen out again. What's happened? Are we all back in? Yep, good. Okay. Lovely. All right, so let's get cracking on this. So I've got my paper sorted out. I've got my picture. Now we need to choose some colours. So I didn't do that in advance, so I'm going to get up and go find some colours. Usually I like to kind of hold my picture over my pastels and try to colour match if I'm doing it for real. So I'm going to go and do that, and I might have to unplug my earbuds because I can't reach, but I'll be back in a sec. And give yourself a little box or something to put your palette in for this painting. It's easier to keep all your colours out when you're working on something and then not put them straight back into your collection, because I can often forget what you had, especially if you want to come and finish it tomorrow or something. So I'll be back in about 10 seconds, won't be long. Okay, now I've got a nice range of colours there. Now I'm looking at it again, I feel like I might need a bit of purple. I'll just see what I've got in purples. That's nice. All right, so I like to test my colours when I can, and I usually just try to find a bit of old scrap paper, even if you just cut up a couple of pieces of paper and have strips ready to use for your colour testing. And it's nice if you can do that before you put them onto your page. So let's have a look and see what these do. What I've tried to do is have a range of colours in tone. So when I say tone, I mean moving from light to dark. So I've got my darkest one, which is a black. I won't use very much of that, but it will be nice to use in some of the shadows and dark spots. I've got this deep violet, blue violet, which looks almost black. It's quite a lovely dark colour. It's lovely for shadows. We're not all going to have the same colours or as many colours to choose from, so don't stress if you don't have all of these. Just see what you can get that's close. So that's a brown, kind of a reddy brown colour. Then I've got this beautiful terracotta orange colour, so I can see quite a lot of that in my leaf. And I've got a red. Ooh. Sometimes you'll find different pastels are really hard. This is really hard. I'll have to find another red, I think. That's horrible. It's very scratchy. But that kind of red I need. And as I said, purple, because purple's going to be lovely in some of those darker spots as well. They're very autumn colours, aren't they? And then I've got a lighter yellow goldy sort of colour, which is really nice. And then for my lightest colour, I've picked up this pale creamy yellow colour. So that will be for my little bits of highlights just on the edges of the leaf and where we can see some light here and there. There's not a real lot of light on there. It's very mid-tone, this particular picture. But we can create some drama and make it a little bit more interesting by adding darker darks and lighter lights. So it's nice to pick out your palette, have it sitting there and in a separate little box. And if you can keep it in order from light to dark, that also makes it a little bit easier, though I tend to mess mine up pretty quickly. But yeah, make sure you've got a nice range from dark to light. That's what's going to really give your picture some power. Just going to try this red. See if that's a bit softer. Yeah, it's too yellow though. So you'll notice with reds, you'll get cool reds and warm reds. Your cool reds will be more blue, so they'll be kind of like a darker tone, I suppose, more towards maroon. That's better. And then your warmer reds will have more yellow in them. They'll be more golden. So I can see more cool reds in this particular picture. It's got a lot of purple. It's very purple based. Okay, so that's my palette. And looks like everybody's still getting colours and getting organised. So that's fine. What we're going to do in a minute is draw up the outline for this leaf onto our paper colour. And then we'll be ready to start applying some colours to it and getting that down. So that'll be the fun bit. All right, so I'm just going to pop my pastels beside me. Over there. If you want to see the colours again, just let me know. I'll put them there. They're just there if you need to be able to refer to those. And then I've got my leaf picture here. So now we can look at the colour version of this and have a bit of a play. So did I grid that up? Can anyone tell me? I can't tell because my printer, I think I did. My printer has put lines on everything. Obviously it's running out of ink or something.
Yeah, no, it was gridded up.
It was awesome. And it's done in 16 squares, isn't it? Is that right?
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So 11.5. So half of that is 5 3/4, I think. So you probably don't need all those grids actually, probably just your halfway ones do. It's not a terribly detailed picture where you need to have all that information to draw it up. So I'll just go half and half for now. If we need more, we can put them in after. So you can see my paper's got a bit dirty because I had my sample colours sitting on there and they all run
Jeannie,
off.
how do you get the printer to print the grid lines?
I don't know.
Mine doesn't print the grid lines.
Really?
No.
On the image or the notes?
On the image.
Okay, yeah, they're not on the image, yeah.
Yeah, it does on the image, but not on. If I want to enlarge the image, which I do to A4 size, then it doesn't print the grid lines.
Can I give you all a trick?
Yep.
Sure.
There's an app if you've got an iPhone, there's an app which is called Grid. So what I do is I put the photo on my phone, and you go onto the app called Grid. You can put as many lines, 1, 2, 3 on it. Take a still shot, and then you put it back on your computer, and you've got it on your computer with all the grid lines on it.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll show you.
That's very cool.
It's called, it's just called Grid. It's just called, hold on, I'll see if I can. I don't know if you can see, there's a little tiny little thing there. It's a green button,
Yeah.
that one, called Grid.
Okay.
I'll be back to front for you. But that's what the logo looks like. So you just get it on the App Store. It's free. Don't pay for it, but it makes it really easy. Anyway, that's my tip for the day.
Thank you very much, Caroline. That's amazing. I love it. Grid, add a grid. All right, get that right now. Yeah, so back to that. I don't send the image, the separate JPEG image that I send doesn't have a grid on it. It's just the picture. The grid is usually on the notes page, which is the one with all the text and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you for that.
That's all right. Now you can put your own grid on. That's cool. Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. I love these classes. We just learn so much. It's very cool. All right. So let's focus on this leaf. So what I'm going to do is draw up start at the little base again, and it kind of comes up there and over your halfway line. I went a bit high there, but never mind. And so, as I said earlier, the nice thing about this is that it doesn't have to be too exact because it's a leaf and it's nature. What we're going to do today is leave the background unpainted. So we're not going to worry about filling all the background in. Of course, if you want to, you're welcome to do that. But I'm going to rely on the paper colour today to be my background. And so that's why I suggested a mid-tone background, because that way you don't need to fill it all up and it just saves on pastel. And it means we can just focus on getting this leaf done. Yeah. I'm just going to undo some of that. Press the undo button. So that's not exactly spot on, but probably should have put the whole grid on there, Jeannie. Never mind. As I said, it's a leaf. No one's really going to know whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise because it's ours. So, you know, it's different to doing a face or something that has bones and needs to be precise. This kind of thing doesn't really need to be that precise. So once you've got your basic shape drawn up, then I suggest that you erase the grid mark that you might have put down on your paper, because that's just going to keep it nice and clean in the background. So I'm just using my kneadable eraser to do that. Plus get all the other bits of pastel off there that I let fall onto it. So I guess the only problem with leaving the background undone is that you have to keep trying to keep it clean. And this paper is like a magnet for pastel dust, so everything just seems to grip onto it. And as we move on, as I tip off the dust onto my little towel next to me here, it's all going to land on my page anyway. So I'll focus on cleaning it all up at the very end properly. Okay, so I've got bits of yellow and all sorts of stuff on there. Okay, so let's start with blocking in. So blocking in is when you just put down big blocks of colour to find the tones or the colours and, you know, just let them sit on the surface. And then we're going to push them all in. So we'll end up with colour blocked in but no detail. And then as we layer and work on building up the layers of the pastels, that's when we start working on the detail. And we can keep adding until you can't add any more. But let's block in first. So by blocking in, I mean just putting down blobs of colour where you see them. And because we're working, trying to match what we can see on the leaf, first I'm going to start with my darks. And I'm not going to use black yet. I'm going to save black for if I want really dark darks. But remember in the charcoal version, we blocked in the darkest areas. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I've picked up my blue violet, or my darkest purple colour, and I'm just going to patch that down in through those dark patches where I can see the super dark colour. Now, don't stress about getting too precise, because this is the messy part. This is where we just have a bit of fun. You can be loose with it. And I like to use the pastel on its side, because that way I can get more pastel down on my page. It also gives me a softer mark, so it's not quite as hard or harsh as a line would be if I just drew a hard line. So, you know, there's all those things to consider. So I've blocked in where I can see the darkest colour. Then so we're going to work from dark up to the light. So the next darkest colour on my palette is this reddy tone. And I can see a lot of that, mostly up in the tip of the leaf at the very top there. And of course we'll lighten this up a little bit where there's light, but we're just looking at the base colours at the moment. And what the goal is to kind of get the whole thing filled in with some sort of colour before we move on to the next stage.
Sorry, Jean, what colour are you using there?
It's like a reddy brown colour. I don't know what it's called, but it's that sort of maroony red colour that I can see on the leaf here.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have that colour, see what you've got that's close to it. It might be a brown, or it could be like a pinky kind of burgundy colour. Just have a look in your box and see what you've got. We're not all going to have the same colours. And I do have a huge range because, you know, I've been collecting them for a long time now. So blessed like that. Takes a long time to build up these collections, doesn't it? Lovely. So I'm just blocking that in where I can see this colour or tone colour. I'm going to go colour. So it's a little bit patchy looking, a little bit messy, but that's okay because we'll refine it as we go. I like this part where you sort of just start off nice and loose and then start to build it up. So that's my red-brown kind of colour. It's like a purpley sort of mid colour. And now I've got my terracotta colour. I can't really see a lot of that. I'm not even sure why I picked that up. I'm going to smush a little bit of it around just where I can see, I guess those, is it a green maybe? Brown, greeny brown colour. Maybe I picked up the wrong colour. But yeah, it looks like a more green brown to me. I might need to review that, but I'm going to pop a bit of terracotta down anyway. Wouldn't hurt to have some of this underneath because it's a similar colour to my paper. So because this is a beautiful autumn leaf, we can just use all these delicious autumny colours. They're so lovely. There, something like that. It's kind of nice. So don't be afraid to mix colours. If you want to, if you're inspired to pick up, I don't know, blue or whatever, then go for it. There's no reason you can't do that. And this is purple. It's not looking terribly different to that other colour I had, so I don't know. Okay, there's a little bit of purple there. Just going to zhoosh that around, sort of around where I've already put that red-brown colour. It's just a slightly different colour and it's got a bit more warmth to it. So I'm just going to put that here and there just to get a little bit of difference in my tone. It's not much, very subtle. And that's the thing, isn't it? A lot of these colours are very subtle and not too bright or bold. Nice. And don't forget the stem too. I've just noticed that's kind of got a purpley red colour to it. So I'll put a bit of the purple on there and maybe a bit of this reddy brown colour, which is similar to the purple. It's very similar tone. So that's why it's hard to distinguish between the two, because they're a similar tone. You ever notice red and green when they're put together look similar? And that's often why people can't read traffic lights, because they're a similar in tone. So if you're colourblind, then often you can't see the difference between red and green. Fun fact. Okay, so I really like these colours. I love how it's all sort of, oh, can't wait to mix them up and merge them together. It's going to be yummy. So now I'm going to pop a bit of red on here. So I can see it's like a pinky red, really. This red's probably a bit too bright, but I like bright. So, you know, you can pretty much do what you want to do. And if you like bright reds, then why not? If you prefer something a bit more muted and softer, then maybe try a pink, kind of a darkish pink. Could be good. I'm just going to patch on some of this red where I see those pinky kinds of tones. And there's also a little bit of that just at the start of the stem where the stem and the leaf meet. A little bit of red there. So just let your eyes wander over the picture and find the different colours and things. So I can see already, because I've blocked in the darks and the mids now, I can kind of see where the light's going to be hitting this leaf. And that'll be the sections that I've either left undone or I've put some of the terracotta colour down because it's the lightest so far. And so it all starts to kind of emerge after a little while. And all you need to do really is just follow the colours and put the colours where you see them. And it's all based on tone. So now I've picked up my lighter yellow colours and my second lightest one. And I'm just going to pop that down where I can see little bits of light throughout here. It's very yellow, and you might prefer not to use something quite so bright. So you could always pick up, you know, something that's a little bit more muted, like a pale brown or a light red or something like that. Just make sure it's a light tone. So it's got to be lighter than what you've used so far. Yummy. Yum, yum, yum. And then I'm just going to pick up my lightest one. So this is where the highlight is. And this is all going to get blended in and pushed around. So don't stress when we lose it. But it's just nice to find the lights as you go and get excited about what that's going to look like at the end, because we're going to put all this back in at the end. But I really like to just test it on the way and get a bit of a feel for how it's going to look and where the light is. And will go all muddy when we blend it in. But that's okay, because then we can brighten it up again when we add more over the top. So the process we're going to do today is putting all the colour down like this. Then we're going to push it all in a minute. And then we'll start adding more colour over the top again and start building up the textures and the feeling of it. So when you're ready to blend, do you want me to wait? Okay, so I'm just going to get my fingers into this. What we want to do is try and keep the edges nice and sharp and crisp. And we can always come back and sharpen them up. So if they do get a bit blurry, don't stress. But I'm just going to start at the top and kind of push this around very carefully and gently. I don't want to muddy it up too much, but I do want to get the colour to hang on to the paper. So as I'm coming down, I'm just starting to merge all these little colours together, and it's being pushed into the tooth of the paper so that it will hang on to it. And you'll find as you do this, like your darkest colour blended in will turn, you know, your terracotta into brown, and it'll turn your red into brown. Everything will go brown and kind of dirty, and that's okay. I'm going to wipe my finger off in between tones, I suppose, because now I've just rubbed all that dark in, and I don't want to get too much dark into other places where it isn't. So you can wipe your finger off in between, you know, blending, just to make sure that you try and keep it fairly clean in between colours. So I'm just pushing this around. I love to see what happens when all the colours mix together. Where you've got light, just lightly push that into. It'll smudge everything and it'll kind of go all soft and blurry. The nice thing with pastels is you can start off with doing this, and then just keep adding layers and building it up and getting things sharper and more refined as you go. So this is basically the base coat. Just getting the base coat down. It gives us a foundation to work on and somewhere to begin with. It also gives you a really nice idea of how all these colours are going to merge together, and what you can create. You know, by pushing them around, you create some really beautiful combinations and blends. And you know, unlike other mediums, you don't have to mix the colours before you put them down. You actually do that on your paper, which can feel a little bit intimidating sometimes if you feel like, oh my goodness, I don't want to muck this up. And if it's sitting on a palette, it's a lot safer and you don't have to use it. But the lovely thing with pastels is that you can just go over things, or, you know, wash it in or brush it off. You can actually redo things quite a few times before the paper starts saying no, because there will come a time when it does fill up and you can't get any more on. But it's usually a few layers, depending on the kinds of pastels that you have, and the paper, of course, that you're using. So if it's good pastel paper, it'll take quite a lot of layers. Okay, so you'll find that getting out into the prickly bits or the pointy bits will be a bit tricky to blend. And so I don't know whether you have any blenders or not, but something like this is really helpful, just to get into those little pointy bits where your fingers are too chunky. So this is an Art Spectrum brand, and I find this quite useful. And they're also used for painting with, so a lot of oil painters use these blenders to push paint around on their canvas. But I find it really helpful just to get into the tricky bits, into those little pointy bits where my fingers won't go, especially when you're trying to keep a sharp edge and have everything fairly defined. And because it's a rubber tip, it kind of has the same texture, I suppose, as your fingers do. So it's similar. It gives you a similar outcome and doesn't make your art look too different. So I'm just kind of going around all the edges and into the tips of the leaves to make sure that that's all pushed into the paper. So my split in my leaf didn't work out very well there. I had the drawing the wrong shape. Just extend that a little bit. Put a bit of purple or something in there. So purple and orange together make the most gorgeous muddy browns. They're so nice. So don't worry about making murky colours. It's actually perfect for this subject today. We like all those earthy colours. They're nice. So this does squeak a little bit. Sorry if it's annoying. Lovely. And then your little stem, you might want to just, if you've got a blender, just push that in lightly, just to get it to hang on to the paper more than anything. So before we go much further, I don't know if you've noticed, but on the picture there's this lovely shadow of the leaf being cast onto the tabletop. And I want to get that in there first because it's behind everything. Then we can come back into the leaf and sharpen up those edges, and it'll really pop on top of the shadow. So for the shadow colour, I'm going to use my dark, that's this dark blue violet, because it just will make it everything kind of pop a little bit. And I can see, can you see the shadow? Because the light's coming from the left, and I would say bottom left, because the shadow, I'm just going to do it in charcoal first. So if you're not sure about something and you just want to mark something in, then just use your charcoal lightly first up to, get things in the right place. So I can see that the shadow comes up through there and then down and into there. So I'm just lightly putting that in there with charcoal before I commit with pastel, because I know I can get this off if I need to. It's a lot softer. And so putting a shadow under something like this, like a still life subject, really does bring them to life. It gives it gravity and grounding. So, it puts it somewhere, which is good, rather than just floating around on nothing, on midair. Okay, down through there. And then we've got the shadow of the stem as well. So see, that comes down here. So it's almost like the leaf, you've picked up the leaf and we've popped it down beside itself. So it's kind of there. So if you want to have a go at putting that in, and also notice over here on the right-hand side of the left petal, we've got some shadow there as well. So just by putting this in very lightly with a bit of charcoal, and use the charcoal on its side so you're not getting a hard mark. And then keep checking it, keep, making sure that you've got it in the right spot. It's a little hard to see on the picture. It's easier on a screen, so I can see it on the iPad much better than I can on the paper. But it's about there-ish. And so that's going to be a really important part of creating this. So it just makes it more interesting, really. We could just do the leaf, but I think the shadow adds another dimension. So once you've kind of marked that in and decided that you're happy with where that is, then it's time to pick up your pastel and start putting that down. I'm just going to see if I can find a smaller piece in the blue violet. Found a very tiny piece. So the reason I wanted something smaller was so that I could just put it down carefully. What I'm going to do is turn my painting around. So that's the other nice thing about working flat. And being left-handed, I want to be able to kind of get into those edges. So once you've put some dark down around a light area, it's not something you want to be blending too much, because your edges can blur and kind of blend together. And then you end up with a muddy mess. So ideally, I'd really like to keep this dark separate from my leaf, because the leaf is quite light, especially on this part here. Okay, so I've gone outside the lines a little bit there. Just widen that up a bit. Now, normally you'd want to kind of mimic the edge of this. So now if you wanted to blend that in, you could try. Just be careful not to blend it into your light colours where it's going to get all dirty. That, again, you might need a blender to get into those pointy bits. The other option is a cotton bud. Sometimes they work really well too, just to push it in. Or those little paper towel thing, paper, whatever they're called, paper stumps. I find these are much better with charcoal than pastel. But anyway, let's see. Yeah, it seems to take it off rather than push it in. So I'm not particularly fond of these paper stumps. I don't think they work so well with pastels. Much nicer with charcoal. Plus they get super dirty. Well, everything does, doesn't it? But this rubber one, yeah, it seems to be doing a much better job of pushing the pastel into the paper. So what we're doing is these big black or dark shapes where you can see these shadows. And if you can't see it on your picture, then just have a look at the screen and you can see where I've put it. And that might help. Even though it's sort of upside down at the moment. So yeah, when you are working on a painting, don't be afraid to turn it around. If you feel like you can't get something right, often if you turn it upside down and the reference photo, so turn everything upside down, you look at it with a different perspective, and oftentimes it'll turn out better because you're not attached to the thing. You're just filling in colours and shapes where you see them. And so, yeah, you often have a much better result doing that. So I've just got to put some dark down in here. So just working your way around the leaf and popping the shadow down in there.
Excuse me, Jeannie.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I had to leave the room for a couple of minutes. So is that a black or is that a Flinders blue in the shadow?
Flinders red, blue. Yeah,
okay.
Either of those, yeah. You could use black if that's all you've got, but the Flinders is nicer.
I went to Townsville the other day and I got a full, like a dark pigment Flinders blue violet, which I'm very excited about. So,
beautiful. Yeah, use that.
I will.
Delicious.
Okay. I'll mute me.
Okay. Cool. Life is distracting, isn't it? Yes, Flinders blue, beautiful. It's my favourite dark. And this is a short, stumpy piece of it. You'll find it's very soft and you won't need a real lot. So just go easy with it. It's also quite crumbly. Well, depending on the brand. This is an Art Spectrum one, and they're very crumbly, so they break very easily. But yeah, it's the best colour for shadows and darks and getting that drama in there. And it's warmer than black because it's a violet base. So it's got a lovely tone to it. So if we were working on black paper, it would be really difficult to get some shadow in here. So that's why I said, we need something, a paper that's a mid-tone, where the dark will show, but it's not too bright. So I'm just going to push this in, and then I'll have to use the blender to get around the edges and get that refined. If you do go outside the edges or, mess it up a little bit, you can always try and get it off with your kneadable eraser. You know, the other erasers, I can't show you, I've packed it, but there's an electric eraser you can get. So it's like a little thing that you stick these tiny little white erasers into, and it vibrates really fast. And it's just battery operated, but it's really great for kind of getting things off, especially pastel, because it just seems to grab it really well and remove it off the page without leaving too much of a mark. So that's always the problem though, if you with the pastels, if you want to get it off, often it'll leave a stain or a shadow behind. But you know, at the end of the day, if you wanted to frame this or keep it and you had a messy background, you could always fill it in. So, you know, you can always just fill the whole thing in with another colour or something similar to the paper. Or you can actually get pastels the same colour as these papers in the colour fix. So for instance, I can buy whatever colour this is, I think they call it terracotta, in a pastel, and they're called colour fix pastels. So they're actually a little different to the usual selection, but they're designed to match the paper. So you could actually patch up your paper and use the same colour. Oddly enough, I've never bothered to buy any. I've probably got some here somewhere, but should do that. Just going to tip my dust off. So try not to blow the dust when it's automatic reflex. You just want to brush it, but you can't because you'll smudge everything. So the next best thing is to blow it. And if you want to, that's fine, but I don't like to because it just ends up everywhere, all through your house and your shoes and your floor. It's not ideal. So that's the shadow bit. And it kind of just makes it look a little bit more interesting, I think. Gives it a bit more depth and body, and makes it a little bit more arty. I forgot to put the split in there. So under that little leaf where it splits, I'm going to go dark in there too, because that's got to have shadow beneath it, you would imagine. Cool. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of lightly going around the edges with my dark again and putting in some of those little grooves and divots. Because the leaves have, you know, those little pointy bits off them, off the edges of them. So I want to try and, I don't know, illustrate that, I guess, through there. And then you can kind of, when we put the light on the edges at the end, we'll be able to touch those up. Awesome. So I'm just going to go back over with some of the dark in the leaf where I had the dark in. Just to strengthen that up a little bit. I love the darks. I think the darks are so interesting. And then coming back up into this top section, I've picked up my reddy brown colour again. So that's my second colour that I used. Just touching up on the surface of this leaf where I had that down before, because what that does is it gives it texture. So just by letting it wipe over now. And when you do that, you can kind of see, if you've got a different colour underneath, you can see the colour underneath, as well as the new colour on the top that we're putting down. And it just gives it such a lovely dimension of colours. It's lovely. I feel like I want to put green in here. I think I'm going to have to. So I'm just smushing this around just where I can see that reddy brown colour. And I might not have put it down the first time round, but I'm kind of I just want to pop it on top. See, you can see all the little patterns in there. There's little round blobs of different colours, your reds and your terracotta and so forth. And they kind of all overlap each other a little bit. And so now we can start just sliding these pastels over the top of what we've already done. And if you don't press too hard, you just get this beautiful glaze over the top of the colour underneath, and it just gives it that beautiful autumn leaf feeling or texture. What I'm going to do is have a 5-minute break, if that's okay. That'll give everyone a chance to catch up and get on track and, you know, just review what you've done. So you might want to just walk away and come back and have a look. It's amazing what you see when you walk away from your art, or prop it up and then step back and see what you might feel like you need to do, whether you need to add some more light or dark, and just feel your way around it. So I can't help myself from picking up yellow now and adding more of that. And I can already see how this is starting to look like it's popping off the page, that's what you want, isn't it? Super exciting. So let's take 5 minutes, and I'll leave you to do whatever you need to do, and I'll come back. So it's 2:21, so we'll come back at 2:26 precisely. Okay, I'll see you soon. Won't be long. Oops. Alrighty. It looks like there's a few people gone off for a tea break or something. That's awesome. So I'm going to keep going with this, and I just grabbed a green on my way back because I thought, like I said earlier, I want to pop a bit of green in here. I think that's going to just brighten it up a tiny little bit. So I'm going to see what happens when I add that into my terracotta colour, and yes, that's lovely. So I want to smush a bit of that around. Just makes it a little bit more colourful and interesting, and add some light. So I can see how this is starting to come alive with the light, isn't it? So putting that little shadow underneath it, and then having the little dark section in the fold of the leaf in here, so you can kind of almost tell that it's folding in and then up again. And so this area here where it's darker is in shadow, and then this side is lighter because the light's hitting it. So I can pop a bit more. I'm using a limey kind of green to get those little bits of highlights in there, just cause why not? So I encourage you to experiment and try different things. You know, if blue excites you, then try that. Why not? So at the end of the day, it's your painting and you get to do whatever you like. The green is a lovely kind of mid-tone that's showing me where the light's hitting. And then I can softly just push that in and blend it off a little bit so that it kind of merges in with the other colours. So what I'm doing now is just running my finger over this very lightly. I don't want to push too hard, because when I push hard, it'll just go muddy. So if you've got a mark that you don't want there and you want to get rid of it, then by all means, you know, rub it right in, and then you can put other colours over the top and it kind of gets rid of it. But if there's something that you'd like to glow or kind of sit on the surface and shine, then just press it very lightly and don't push too hard. So learning to paint with pastels is all about learning to apply different pressure to get different effects. And it depends on how hard you press as to what kinds of effects you'll get with different techniques. And as we build the layers up on something, then you want to be pressing less hard, and you want that thing to that colour to sit on the surface and shine. So I'm still looking at this in tones. So in order to make my leaf kind of bend, I guess, and be light, you know, on this side, and then have that little bit of a shadow down in the middle there, then you need to be very aware of the tones that you're using. And by that I mean the lights and the darks. So you can see where I've got this light here on the right hand side on that bottom section with the black shadow behind, or the dark violet blue shadow. And then we've got this bright light section here. It really pops, doesn't it? Because it's light against dark. And so that's one of the things that will kind of draw your eye first when you first see this, because it's the contrast. It's the power of the contrast. And so what we don't want to do is have too many of those parts, you know, on the leaf, because then it kind of gets saturated. If you have brights everywhere, then it doesn't become a feature anymore. It just becomes all over kind of thing, and then nothing stands out. Whereas if you just have a couple of spots that are quite light, like we've got on the leaf. So here on that bottom part there where I've made it quite yellow is quite light. And then we've got some light edges over here, which we'll get into in a minute. But I like to just practice putting them in loosely, because I know I can go over that or lighten it or darken it if I need to. but it's kind of fun just to, you know, have a bit of a play. But by using my dark in here and then a little bit of light with my green and then a bit more of dark but not quite as much here, it's giving me those undulations and those bumpy bits in the leaf, and it's telling me, you know, where the light's coming from and how deep the undulation is. So this one here is not as deep as that one in the middle, and you can tell that by how dark this one has gotten. So it's kind of fun to have a bit of a play. So once we've got a fair bit of colour on there, and I'm just going to keep kind of dabbing on some more colour, and I want to really get this nice and rich and thick, and then we'll do some of the vein work and start working on the little lines in the leaves that will give it even more texture and body. But I'm liking the purple and the green mixed in together. That's really quite pleasant. It makes like a bruised sort of colour. It's lovely. And then we've got to do the veins. So if you're trying to get a variation of shape or mark, just sort of twist your hand around a little bit and change the direction that you're kind of moving your hand in to get a bit of a variation in your movements. So, you know, just keeping it kind of loose and random, I suppose, because this is a thing from nature. So everything in nature is has its own shape, and they're very rare. Well, they do have patterns, obviously, but it's, you know, rare that you would get exactly the same shape or pattern along the edge of a leaf, for example. And so to try to keep your movements or your marks random for grass and that kind of thing, you've just got to keep kind of moving the direction that you're holding things in, or the way you're holding something. So varying all those things will give you lovely random marks in things like grass and nature. What I'm doing now, I'm just running around with my yellow, which is my second lightest colour, and I'm lightening up little sections where I feel like the light's hitting on the leaf, just to try and give it a little bit of more curl, a little bit more of a bumpiness. It seems to be working. So it's looking a little smooth though, so I think we need to start putting a few of the veins and things in now to try and get some more texture happening. So I'm just gonna firm up this shadow of the stalk first. I'm using a bit of charcoal here, and then blend that in softly. Very nice. All right, let's do these veins. So I'm going to suggest you use charcoal actually, unless you have a pencil handy. Only because the pastels, you know, it's hard, often hard, not always, but it's tricky sometimes to find a sharp edge and to get a fine line with a chunky pastel. So unless you've got some hard pastels like a Faber-Castell, which are the hard square ones, or something with an edge on it, you might be happier to use a pencil, or a charcoal stick. Charcoal's perfect too. So they'll work nicely together. But what I want to do is just lightly mark in these vein marks. So what I'm doing is just following the vein down through that leaf, in through there. So that's just a line I've made with my pencil. And what I'm doing is I'm holding my pencil on the end, so I'm keeping it quite loose, rather than holding it like that, like you would do if you were writing or drawing carefully. Hold it nice and loose. That way you get kind of a more natural mark, and you can keep it fairly light. So pull it down through there and then into the base of the leaf. So that's just a little line. And then if you look closely, you can see there's a few little veins running off that center mark. So you could just put a few little lines through there. Again, keep them kind of loose and random. Keep checking your picture as to where they sit. We don't want to make them too strong because they're not terribly strong or obvious. And then I can't see many in the bottom section of that. I'm going to put a couple in anyway, just because. Cool. And now we're going to do the same on the center leaf. So starting up at the top and literally just almost not even pushing the pencil or charcoal very hard, and just kind of run it down through there, because it's not a hard straight line. It's got a little bit of a, you know, slight wobble to it. So we want to keep it that way. And then again, just some of those little vein marks coming off that out to the edges of the leaves. What we're going to do after this is put a light mark on the right hand side of each of these veins, so that it will look like the light's catching on the very edge and the dark section is dipping down into the leaf, hopefully, if we get it right. Okay, so that's that one. And if you wanted to, you could make it a little bit darker or thicker in a couple of spots if you feel like it needs to have that. So this is coming together nicely. And then back over onto that left hand section. So just do the same sort of thing. And if you run that vein down on the left hand side of your darkest shaded area, so you can see that's where the leaf kind of tips down, doesn't it, on the vein. And then as it goes down towards the top of the stem, it's got this little bit of light just along there. So we can put that in a minute too. And then again, we've got these veins that come out from the center out to the side. There we go. So it's starting to take some shape, I think. And while I've got my black pencil, or while you've got a charcoal in your hand, just have a look at the edges. I just want to darken up a couple of the little edges on the left-hand side here. I can see that, you know, we've got those little spiky bits on the edges of the leaf that stick out. And it's not impossible to do, but it will take a little bit more time. But I just wanted to darken off a couple of these edges here. Just gives them that little burnt look. And then this one darkens off as well. So it's fun to have a bit of a play and just, you know, let the pencil wander around and press a little harder here and there where you want more dark. Okay, so we've got that bit done. Now, if you have a light pencil, I'm going to use this colour, which is like a pale lemon colour. If you don't have a light pencil, then you might see if you can find a light pastel that might have a bit of an edge on it. So a new pastel would be the best option. I'm just leaning over to grab one. Something like that. It's a schmiggy, so it's going to be pretty soft. But if you can find an edge on the end of your pastel, or if you have a square pastel that might have a sharp edge on it in a light colour, white if that's all you have. If that's all you've got, then use white. Sometimes if you can only get a couple of pastel pencils, it's always good to get a white and then like a pale yellow like this one, because that will kind of help with your highlights, but it's not super bright. So if you can only manage to get a couple, then get yourself a pale yellow, a white and a black, and that'll be enough to get you out of trouble for your drawings and things. Okay, so let's put some light on the edge of these veins. I'm going to try not to lean my hand on the paper and smudge it too much. if the light's coming from the left, then it's going to be hitting on the right side of these veins. So I'm just going to lightly draw a light mark down on the right-hand side. And what you want to do is try not to have an even line. So try to keep it a little bit, not necessarily broken, but uneven. So you don't want it all one hard, thick line. Just try to break it up a little bit. And then just check your picture and see where the light's coming from. So that's the secret, is just to check the direction of your light and determine where that's coming from. So by putting a little bit of light on the other side of your vein, hopefully that's going to start to give it some depth and make it look like it's kind of dipping down into the leaf, if that makes sense. And so I'm just going to run around all these veins. I'm not going to do all of them. I want to leave some of them undone, but the main veins in the center of each segment need to kind of have that little bit of 3D effect. And if you look very closely, you can see how there's a little bit of light just on the right side. So I'm looking at mine now, and I can see mine on my screen, so I have an advantage because it's always better to look at it from somewhere else other than on your artwork. And I can see that's actually starting to work quite nicely to get that lovely bit of light. Now on the left-hand side of the leaf, if the light's coming from that side, then it's got to be hitting on the left of that vein, hasn't it? So I've just popped a bit of light. It's really nice to use pencils. If you can get a whole set, go for it. I don't use pencils very often, but for fine work like this, they're very handy. And so I can gently just put a little bit of light down on the edge of that one. And I might even put a bit of light on the other side of it too, just to see what happens. Because you know you can always undo things if you, yeah, that's nice. It's given it, it's like a little dip in the vein. So it's like it comes up and catches the light, dips down into the dark valley of the vein, and then it pops up again on the other side, which is quite a nice subtle little way of getting those veins to stand out. So as I said, don't do a hard long mark. Try to kind of vary the pressure. So when you want to get a line that's not all the same width and size, you can kind of push harder and then press lighter and then push a bit harder, and again hold your pencil fairly loose and vary the pressure, and that will give you a lovely range of dark and light and make it look like it's a real leaf. Now I'm just going to run around the outside of this where I can see highlights or bits of light. This is the fun part when you get to put the light on. It's just the best. So sometimes doing a painting is not much fun and it seems to be ugly all the time. But as soon as you get to the light, you pop those little bits of shine on something, it just makes it all so worthwhile. Now I feel like I've done a bit too much there, so I'm just going to smudge it in. So if you feel like you've, gone overboard or done too much, just push it in with your finger, soften it off. And if you want to, you can always put a bit more pastel down if you want to darken something off or send it off into the background. I love the way that this bright yellow is bouncing off that dark shadow. It's just so eye-catching. But if I did the same thing in another spot, it wouldn't be as impactful. So yeah, try not to kind of overemphasize the bright areas. If you just keep it to one spot or one section, it'll have more power. I'm just darkening this side off a little bit with my purple. There we go. Pop a bit more. I think a bit of green might be nice in there. So just have a wander around in your painting now, and check on your colours. Check, you know, that you've got the tones doing what they need to do, and that you've got little bits of light where you need them. So I've just noticed on the end of the leaf where it meets the stalk, it's got a little bit of red there. So you could red that up a bit more, put a bit more red in there. And yeah, I've lost some of the red in a couple of spots. I'm going to patch that back in. So I do like the red. It's lovely and bright. And just wander around there with your pastel in your hand. So, you know, if you've got red in your hand or green or yellow, whatever it is, just find it again in the picture and make sure that you've got it where you need to have it. And get all those in those spots. And make sure that you have a beautiful bright spot like that bottom right leaf, and get that really shiny and light against your shadow. So nice. You might want to darken off the veins a little bit. So if you find that maybe some of the vein areas are not in shadow enough, then, you know, grab your pencil or your charcoal again and just put a bit more pressure on in a couple of spots to make the line a bit more heavy. And that'll give it more depth. It'll kind of sink it down a bit further into the texture of the leaf and create a bigger crease, I suppose. So you could do that if you wanted to emphasize the vein. And again, make sure your line isn't one hard, straight mark, but just keep it, you know, varied as far as the width and pressure go. I'm really liking how this is looking. It's looking like it's got all this beautiful shadow and light. And so I've picked up my light pencil again, and I'm just running down the side of the vein again to emphasize that little bit of light that might be catching as it comes up out of the vein into the leaf, to the body of the leaf. And I've put it like a hard mark. For instance, I could put a hard mark here like this. Right, so that might look too bright perhaps. So if I want to sort of soften it off and bleed it off into the rest of the leaf, just gently, gently, gently blend it like this with my pencil. What's happening is I'm not pressing very hard, and so the pencil is pulling that light colour out from here and pushing it into the existing pastel I've already put down, but it's not making it too light because I'm just pressing lightly. So I'm kind of using the pencil a bit like a blender. And if you don't press too hard, it kind of just mixes up whatever's on the paper. You might add a little bit more colour or light to it as you go. But yeah, it's a nice way to sort of just blend everything through. So you'll see I'm holding my pencil a lot firmer now because the work is more precise, and I want to kind of blend that out gently into that colour. So I really like how the shadow is working on this. And don't forget, you can always just dab your finger in there if you want to, you know, soften something off. If it's too strong or too dark or something like that, just pop your finger on it and give it a little dab. That pushes the pigment into the paper. It also kind of blends it without making too much muddy colour. And when you are putting the light in like this with your pencil or your light pastel, what you want to do is keep squinting at your picture. So remember how we squinted at the black and white one and you could see the blacks and the whites and the greys? If you do that on the colour version, you'll see the same thing. You'll see where it's really light and you'll see where it's really dark. And then just look for the super light bits, the really, really, really bright bits that are catching the light. And that'll be where the light's hitting those tiny little bits of leaf. And then you can grab your lightest pastel. For instance, this is my pale yellow one. And pop a bit of that down where you can see these extra bits of light. As I said before, you don't want to do too much light because we don't want to take away from that vibrancy of the bright leaf over here. I might just add a little bit of my pale lemon on there just to give it a bit more pow. Yeah, that's nice on the black, isn't it? But these ones here that I've just put in on the other side where I can see light, I'm going to dab at those in a minute and just soften them off a bit because I don't want them to dominate and they just need to be a little bit softer. But I can see on the top center leaf up the top there's light shining on there too. And so to get that effect, if you just get your pale pastel, whether it's white or pale lemon, and just wipe it really gently over there. So you don't press too hard, just want to wipe it really gently just to get a little bit of pigment to sit on the surface like that. And then we can gently dab it in. So you don't always have to press really hard to get a lot of colour down. You can go very lightly and then just very gently dab it in. So that's when you start to get that beautiful texture of the leaf itself. So now I'm going to dab all this in and soften it off a little bit. Doing that, I've lost some of my vein work, but I can always pop that back over. See how that just softens off that yellow colour that I put down and merges it in with the colour underneath it. So it's making now that kind of milky shine, which is what I wanted because that red area on the top of the leaf is like a burgundy, but it's kind of milky. Got a milky look to it. This area here where I just put some light, don't like it. Don't like that at all actually. Going to get rid of that. So to get rid of it, I can just pick up try a bit of green. And then maybe a bit of where's that one gone there? Red-brown colour. I didn't like the light on that. I thought it looked a little bit fake. So I can soften that off and push it in and just put other colours over the top. So now it's kind of disappeared again, which is good. Don't mind this one here. Might have to rethink that, but I quite like how that's just got this cute little glow on there. And then, as I said before, I've lost a bit of my vein work, so I've got to put a bit of that back in now. Just go over that line. Might need to add a bit more light to it and up in the top as well. And then a bit more light on the high side of that one. Just down through there. So you can see how you can get those lovely textures onto your leaf. If I just pick up my, what is that, blue violet, and just literally stamp it basically. And because this has got such lovely textures, what it's doing is it's putting some colour down on the paper, but it's also picking up whatever's underneath it and then putting it down again when I press it down again. So I'm starting to get these lovely blurry kind of combinations of colour, and it's creating a lovely texture. So you can leave that then sitting on the surface if you want to and just let it do its thing, or you can dab it back in. If I wanted more red, I could come back with red again and go over the top. So you can kind of keep adding, but the secret is don't keep blending, because if you kept adding colour and then keep blending it, so pushing it around with your fingers, it's just going to keep turning into mud. And when you want your brights to sit on the surface like that, you don't want mud. So you've got to stop blending at some point. I've lost my vein again. So this is what happens, you see. You put more colour on, then you lose something and you've got to go back and put it in again. That's okay. Not that hard, really. Cool. And now what I want to look at is there's some little shiny edges right on the very left of the leaf. So you can see right on the very edge here. I'm going to put it in. I did put it in earlier and then I lost it, but I just want to put a tiny little bit in there. And that helps to just lift that side of the leaf and again reinforce the direction of the light and where it's coming from and where it's catching on the edges there. So it's lovely. It's sort of now got some texture and body, and it's glowing in the light, isn't it? You feel like that's actually in the afternoon sun or somewhere because it's so warm. Now I'm trying to find my kneadable eraser. There you are. What I want to do now is just clean up my paper around the edges. So I'm just going to start to dab it with my eraser. And as you do that, you'll need to find a clean side every couple of dabs, because what happens is the eraser picks up the pigment, and if you don't find another clean edge, it'll just put it back down again. So I just want to run around this quickly and clean up all those sides to get that excess pastel off my paper. Probably should tip the dust off before I do that. So tipping off the dust. Another good thing to catch the dust in, which I used to use on the easel, is alfoil. So if you're on an easel, put some alfoil under your board and fold it over so that it acts like a little tunnel or a funnel, and it'll catch all the dust, and it just slides off the alfoil nicely straight into the bin. Or if you want to keep it to make more pastels with, you can do that. So I had actually been saving up all my dust for the last couple of years, and I had jars and jars of the stuff. And of course it all turns into grey once you mix all the colours together. I picked them all up the other day and put them in the bin because I thought, that's never going to happen. Who's got time to make pastels? Really? So I tossed it all out. But if you're into that and you want to make your own, and I have done it once, it's kind of fun, then you can keep all your dust. So you can funnel your dust off into a container and just save it up. And then to make a new pastel, all you do is add a bit of water to your dust. So it's a little bit like making clay. So you just add a bit of water until it's a nice consistency where you can actually roll it into a shape. And then you've got a new pastel. Got to let it dry. Just leave it outside for a while to dry, and you'll end up with your very own. But as I said, I haven't got time for that, so. Okay. So we're just about ready to finish up very soon. It's nearly 3 o'clock, and I'm going to go for another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll, if you're happy to hold your painting up to the screen so we can get a screenshot of everybody's leaf. And please don't forget to send them to me as well, so that way I can pop them into the newsletter and share them on Facebook and everything. It's nice to see your art out there and share it with other people. So if you wanted to share the newsletter with your painting and everyone else is in it, you could easily just forward that on to someone else. I don't mind if you do that at all. And it's lovely to see what everyone else has done too. And, notice other people's techniques and how they achieve different things. So don't forget to send me your pictures. I think I only had 4 from last week. So I know it's a pain in the neck, but text it or send it on Facebook Messenger or email, whatever works. I'm easy. And then I can just pop them in there for everyone to see. What else did I want to say? So we've got a class next week. So that's next Friday. 26th. And then after that, I won't be doing classes for 2 weeks because we're moving house and I just won't be set up for it. So it'll be the 17th of July will be the next class after next week. So I think that actually works out to be school holidays here in Queensland. So that might work out for a lot of people if you've got kids or grandkids to worry about. Yeah, so one more class next Friday and then back on the 17th of July in new premises. And hopefully we'll have internet and everything will be fine and dandy. That's the plan anyway. I'm sure Brian will make sure that happens. Yeah. So good. So you could keep fiddling with this till the cows come home. And it's so easy just to not want to stop, isn't it? But we're going to stop in a couple of minutes and have a look and see how you all went.
Can I just ask you, Jeannie, I mucked up my shadow so much, and then I've tried to fix it with my eraser, and it's just now a big, I think I've destroyed the eraser now.
Oh.
But it's, I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
I'll try and fix it, but how would I? Just have to get a new eraser or?
So your eraser's completely black?
Yeah.
And it's not working anymore?
No, and I've just got a big black mess, but otherwise it was a really great lesson. just that last bit, I don't know what I did wrong, but anyway.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's hard when you're using those dark colours because they stain the paper and they're really hard to get off.
Yeah.
The only other thing you could maybe do is just like fill the whole back in with a dark colour and not worry about the shadow.
Sure.
So what colour paper are you working on?
I'm on this colour, like a pale colour.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it's cool. I'm going to work on it during the week, and I might just get another eraser. But yeah. That was hard. The shadows were hard. Yeah, I found it difficult.
Did you? Yeah.
Just the shadows.
It is, yep. Shadows are tricky.
Yeah.
Literally, you could just colour the whole thing in with that shadow colour, and then have your leaf sitting on a darker background, basically.
Yeah.
That's entirely possible. But the erasers do fill up pretty quickly. I find I can get quite a lot of time out of one eraser, though. You just got to keep kneading it. But I'm guessing you've probably done all that. And,
yeah. Can
Yeah.
you wash them? No.
No, I don't think so.
That's
I've never
cool.
tried, to be honest.
I'll get another one and I'll finish this next week.
Excellent. Wonderful. Otherwise, you enjoyed it, Nicole.
I did. Oh yeah, I loved it, and
Good.
I loved. Things came together at the end for me.
Yeah.
And I was really happy with it. I just
Fantastic.
I'll work on it during the week.
Yeah, excellent, wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. My pleasure. All right then. Well, if everybody's ready, I'm going to switch back to the other screen, and then we can have a look at what you've done, if that's okay. Just going to press my stop share button, and I am recording this for the sake of the recording. Thank you for coming. I hope you've enjoyed this class, and stay tuned for more. Okay, so I've just got to stop recording now.